The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you all. We're continuing our study of the book of Job. Today we are going to take a look at chapter 23 and chapter 24. It's Job's reply to Eliphaz, who has made a kind of relatively short argument, probably the most, if you use this word, most vicious argument, which really kind of says, I know what you have done, and he lays out a number of accusations against Job, how he has exploited the poor and the widow and the orphan, and taken advantage of them. But Job replies, and I think a lot of ways Job kind of ignores, and I think this is kind of an increasing theme as we continue to go forward, and we are kind of in the very last throes of the three cycles of three friends. But he has kind of increasingly just made his argument with very little reference, and we'll see a little bit of reference to what the friends have said to him. But for the most part, he's just going to put forth his case. And chapter 24 is going to actually be kind of some almost, I would say, newish material or newish argument from Job as well. So we begin. Chapter 23 of the book of Job. Then Job answered and said, "Today also my complaint is bitter. My hand is heavy on account of my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat. I would lay my case before him. I would fill my mouth with arguments. I would know what he would answer me and understand what he would say to me. Would he contend with me in the greatness of his power? No, he would pay attention to me. There, an upright man could argue with him, and I would be acquitted forever by my judge." Really, in many ways, right, Job is kind of making the same argument that he has made, or the same discussion that he has had since the very beginning. I want to plead my case before God, and that sort of idea that this is kind of almost like a courtroom sort of situation. We have, verse 3 mentions his seat, right, a kind of a seat of judgment. Even the very last word that we read there at the end of verse 7 is that he wants to be acquitted by his judge. So, kind of God as judge, and sometimes we've even kind of seen either God as prosecutor or God as defendant, and Job as defendant and God as prosecutor. But here, at least he's like, look, you're going to judge me. I've got a good argument. You need to listen to me. Kind of maybe some of the little points in there that aren't always quite as clear. Today, also, my complaint is bitter, right? And with that I think we don't have a hard time understanding. He is suffering physically, emotionally. His dignity has been destroyed. His friends have done everything they could to strip him of honor as well, and their accusations against him. But his physical suffering is great. And then kind of like, my hand is heavy on account of my groaning, right? The way that I think most theologians seem to have interpreted this is, it's kind of, you kind of see like maybe in a baseball game, somebody throws a pitch a little too close or thumps somebody on the helmet, and the two dugouts kind of like go at each other, but there's maybe one guy's holding the other guy back. I think that's kind of what Job is saying about himself. He's holding himself back. His hand is heavy. He's kind of taking care of his own himself from going after I'm not sure who, maybe going after God, but at least he's holding himself back. But then, right, it was really kind of very upbeat in much of what he has to say there. I know when I find him, that I'll be able to come and make this argument. I have all of these things. I fill my mouth with argument. It's almost like that sort of theme, like he says, I got so much to say. It's all going to just spill out of me as soon as I get a chance to make my argument before God. And I know what he'll answer, and I understand what to say. Verse 6 kind of has almost like a hypothetical sort of question. Would he contend with me in the greatness of power, which is kind of to say, would he destroy me before I could even make my argument? Would he just kind of like, or like almost like a lawyer who knows how to get a guy who's on the stand and just kind of make everything he says contradict what he really means? Will he just overwhelm me with his questioning and his accusations? No, Job says there at the end of verse 6, he will pay attention to me, right? And even, right, an upright man could argue with him, right? God will hear the argument of the upright man, and I will be acquitted forever by my judge, right? He is just so sure. He trusts God to do what is true and what is good and what is right. And I am right. I have not sinned against you, as he's going to make clear again here in just a few minutes. And he will be acquitted. So we continue. Verse 8 here, behold, I go forward, but he is not there. And backwards, but I do not perceive him. On the left, when he is working, I do not behold him. He turns to the right, but I do not see him. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tried me, I shall come out as gold. My foot has held fast to his step. I have kept his way and have not turned aside. I have not departed from the commandments of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my portion of food. And I think that's a good spot to change it. I think there's a little bit of a change in the theme of his, right? I don't know where he's at, which, just jumping back, verse 2 or verse 3, there is this, oh, that I knew where I could find him, right? I go forward, I go backwards, I look to my left, I look to my right, I go north, south, east, and west, and I can't find him. I know he's there, he's at work, I know he's there, but he sees me. And as Job kind of says there, right, my foot has held fast. I keep his ways. I've not turned aside. I have not departed from his commandments of his lips. I treasure the words of his mouth more than my food. But he is, right? I've kept this, this is the argument again and again and again throughout this book. I've not done anything wrong. Right, even kind of the statement about, verse 10 there, he knows the way that I take, and when he has tried me, I shall come out as gold, right? Even, kind of Paul takes that theme a couple of different times about, the gold going through the fire to take out all the impurities, right? I'm gold. Once you put me to the test through that fire, you're going to see that what I am is gold, which actually Eliphaz, right, makes that accusation about Job, and I don't know if there's an exact tie-in, but we've got one chapter to the next chapter both mentioning gold. So there could be something there. Eliphaz makes kind of a connection that you got to just lay that gold down and now just rejoice in what God is doing. And, you've been greedy for gold, but he's saying, no, I am the gold because God will see once he tests me. Verse 13 through the end of 24, but he is unchangeable, and who can turn him back? What he desires, that he does, for he will complete what he appoints for me, and many such things are in his mind. Therefore, I am terrified at his presence. When I consider, I am in dread of him. God has made my heart faint. The Almighty has terrified me. Yet I am not silent because of the darkness. Yet I am not silent because of the darkness, nor because thick darkness covers his face. Right? So he's. I had a point there, and I was just about to make it, but I think in general, right, God is doing what he's going to do, I think, is in some ways, and it does, it's almost like he's so, we've kind of changed the mood a little bit within this one chapter. We kind of start off, Job is just so confident. As soon as I find where he's at, I'm going to put my argument before him. I'm going to lay my case before his seat, and I'm just going to tell him everything. And you know what? He's going to agree fully with me. But now he's still saying, like, look, God's going to do what God's going to do. He's unchangeable. Who can turn him back? He will complete what he has appointed for me. He has made, and many such things are in his mind. He's going to do what he's going to do. I kind of put it in the vernacular, if you would. And there's nothing I can do to change what he's going to do. So there is, kind of almost, if we start with a lot of like, God will listen to me. It's going to be great. As soon as I find him, he's going to agree fully with what I have done because I'm gold. But now he's saying, I'm terrified at his presence. The Almighty, I am in dread of him. My heart faints. The Almighty terrifies me. But he still finishes this chapter by saying, I'm still going to speak. Even though the great darkness hides God, because of the darkness, I cannot help but argue my case. Chapter 24. Job makes a real change in what he's going to say here. And in some ways, it's not too far from all the things he has said, but I think there's a real kind of a disconnect, if you would, from his own argument about himself. And even kind of the friend's argument about himself. Because really, this has all been, for the most part, I think you can say, Job, you're, I mean, the friends would argue, Job, you are suffering, therefore, God, you must have done something, God must be punishing you. This is the explanation, the easy peasy explanation. Job is replying like, look, the world is a whole lot more complicated than that. I have not done anything wrong, just as we just heard him said. I've kept his commandments. His words are more precious to me than my own food to fill my belly and to keep me alive. I love the way of the Lord, and I've kept the way of the Lord, but I'm still suffering. Explain that one to me, friends. And we see tons of wickedness go on in the world, which is what we're going to kind of encounter here through much of this. Now he's really going to disconnect it from himself, and it's just a lament, then not with an answer. Not with a quick, easy explanation, although there's a bit of an explanation at the end here. But there's a much of this whole chapter is just a lament about the evil of the world, not the evil in my life for Job as an individual, but the evil that comes upon the world. So we just kind of dig into it. Let's just look at this very first verse, kind of to set the stage for what he's going to say. Why are not times of judgment kept by the Almighty? And why do those who know him never see his day? Right? So here's the thing. We're going to unpack a whole lot of kind of a litany, if you would, of the evil things that Job sees going on in the world and how they just are unanswered, right? And particularly, he talks about how the poor, the widowed, the orphaned are exploited within the world, and God seems silent. And so this is really the kind of the argument here. Why are not times of judgment kept? Right? If God is supposed to punish evil in this world, but there definitely seems to be a whole lot of evil going on that just doesn't seem to be answered. Why? And we kind of had that phrase about why does he not keep? Why do they never see his day? I think throughout the Old Testament, kind of the day of the Lord is kind of an important phrase, right? I think in most cases I would probably see it or understand it to mean the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come, and he will come again in all of his glory to judge the living and the dead, right? Jesus reappears and brings a final judgment against the world. And that is the day of the Lord, that day, right? That final day. But I think in a smaller J judgment day, if you would, not a capital J judgment day, but a small case judgment day, this day is just why is there not punishment today, tomorrow, and the next day? Whether or not Jesus comes back in all of his glory, sort of understanding there. And now we're going to go into, like I said, a litany of accusations against the world, but also maybe against the silence of God. Some move landmarks. They seize flocks and pasture them. They drive away donkeys of the fatherless. They take the widow's ox for a pledge. They thrust the poor off the road. The poor of the earth are hiding themselves. Behold, like wild donkeys in the desert, the poor go out into their toil, seeking game. The wastelands yield food for their children. They gather their fodder in the field, and they glean the vineyards of the wicked man. They lie at night naked, without clothing, and have no covering in the cold. They are wet with the rain of the mountains and cling to the rock for lack of shelter. They are those who snatch the fatherless from the breast and take a pledge against the poor. They go about naked without clothing, hungry, and they carry the sheath. Among the olive rows of the wicked they make oil. They tread the winepress, but suffer thirst. For out of the city the dying groan, the souls of the wounded cry for help. Yet God charges no one with wrong. As I said, just a litany of complaints. So the first one about landmarks, moving landmarks. I mean, if you own property, you understand, right? There's a border between your property, your neighbor's property. Whether you have a large lot of land or hundreds of acres, or just a little quarter-acre plot somewhere in town, you understand. I mean, even you know where to stop cutting the grass, if you would, right? There's land, and the understanding that and not only for the Israelites, but I think for many of the other cultures, with around them, there's kind of an understanding that landmarks are sacred things. They are almost regarded as holy markers of sorts of where one man's land begins and another man's land ends. But right, what are the thief, the wicked, do, they go and they move that landmark and they take their land, right? It's a stealing of land, and it's also a stealing of flocks, and it's also pasturing them, right? Which almost, I think there's kind of almost an implication there. I've stolen your land, I've stolen your animals, and now, just to almost thumb my nose at you, I'm going to take your animals that I stole, put them back on the land that I stole from you, and you are just going to stand there in shock that I have robbed you of everything and have no ability or shame to even be able to say, like, I'm gonna use the whole thing for myself, and you can't do anything about it. So nanny nanny poo poo. I don't know. Maybe we can edit that out. That was pretty stupid. Here they continue. They drive away the donkey from the fatherless, right? An orphan child. What does he have to feed himself and possibly his mother and siblings? Is this donkey, the only beast of burden that he has to work, and you've stolen that? And then, of course, right, the same thing with you take the widow's ox for a pledge. The Eliphaz discussion, we talked a little bit about pledges, right? And there's kind of a biblical implication that you need to. Even if the rich man gets a pledge from a poor man, it says something as simple as his cloak. He needs to return it because he needs that. That's the only piece of clothing he has. That's the only thing that keeps him warm at night, which kind of picks up on some of the things we'll see in verses 7 and 8 here about the nakedness, and as we continue after that. But you're supposed to return those things, and that's kind of I think Deuteronomy chapter 24 deals with that. By the way, the landmark discussion is Deuteronomy chapter 27. You can see the discussion on those things if you wanted to give a little cross referencing here. But you've stolen the beast of burden, which is the only way they have to pay you back. You're taking them as a pledge. How are they going to pay you back except for with that beast of burden? And you've stolen the one means of production that they have. Thus thrust the poor. They thrust the poor off the road. The poor of the earth are all hide themselves. It's not kind of like you gave them a check into the ice or into the glass there on a hockey game, but it is the poor are hiding because the times have become so ruthless, so evil that the poor have to hide themselves out in the wilderness, and they're like wild donkeys looking. I mean, kind of a couple of things they say there about the food, right? That they gather the fodder of the field, right? You're eating like a wild animal. You kind of, if I would probably never, though I probably rarely ever use the word fodder, I would think of that as food that you would feed a horse or a donkey or a cow. This is what the poor are eating, right? They're grazing like wild animals. They have to hunt, whatever small game there is within the Middle East at this time. They're effectively they're starving. They have to. End of verse 6 there, it talks about how they glean the vineyards of the wicked man, right? They're actually Leviticus 19 and also Deuteronomy chapter 24 have kind of laws that require that the man who has the farm that he leave a certain percentage of his crop behind, whether it be grain or in this case we kind of hear grapes. You don't strip bare the land, but you leave that little bit of extra that the poor may come and take it. And if you've read the book of Ruth or know that story, that's how Ruth, who with her mother-in-law Naomi come back to Israel, but they're poor. And so they have to glean, that is to say, follow the harvesters and pick up the grains that they drop as they go along. And that's kind of, she catches the eye of Boaz, and Boaz tells him, leave a lot of extra food for her. And eventually, by the end of the story, they're married, and their great grandson is Jesus. So there's your Ruth connection. But they are gleaning from the land. That sort of idea that they are so poor they have to pick up what is dropped from others. And of course, right, we pick up that theme of nakedness. They lie naked without clothing. They're freezing, and then it's raining, and they have to hold on to a rock as the best thing they've got to any sort of shelter, which is no shelter at all. And then verse 9 is kind of interesting. Mine has it kind of in a bracketed here. Those who, there are those who snatch the almost kind of like saying, like you have to whisper it. And I've heard stories of those who steal children off the breast of their fatherless children, right? They have no father to stand up and defend them. They are snatched from the breast of their mothers as a pledge, right? Not as, if you once took a widow's ox as a pledge, that's shocking enough, and you don't give her back her pledge, or don't give her back her ox, or you steal a child's an orphan's donkey, but now you're actually taking children as a pledge. And then, of course, then they got to go to work. And how do they go to work? They go to work naked. They carry the sheaves. They're pressing out the olives. They're pressing out the grapes. And there is the wine. There is the grape juice. And they are thirsty. But, of course, do they get anything? No. This is the state of the world that Job sees. And as we hear that last dramatic verse 12, for out of the city the dying groan, the souls of the wanderers cry out for help. Or the wounded cry out for help. Yet God charges no one with wrong, right? Going back to the very first verse there, the kind of a complement to the first and the last verse of that chunk of our reading here from chapter 24. Where is the time of judgment? Where is the day of the Lord? And this is kind of what he says. God does not bring charges against those who are doing evil. And then we get a little bit more of it, just a description of the evil, of the rebellion of the evil. There are those who rebel against the light. Remember, and again, right? Light, darkness, light, good, darkness, evil. So, right? They are those who rebel against the light, though who are not acquainted with it and do not stay in its path, right? They have turned away from the way of the Lord. Your word is a light to my path, and a word is a lamp to my a light to my feet and a lamp to my path, or something combination, right? But the word of the Lord is light, and of course they're not acquainted with it. They hide from it. The murderer rises before his light that he may kill the poor and needy, and in the night he is like a thief. The eyes of the adulterer are waiting for the twilight, saying, no eye will see me, and he veils his face. In the dark they dig through houses. By day they shut themselves up. Of course, they don't want to be seen by the light. They have to hide. For they do not know the light. The deep darkness is mourning to all of them. For they are friends with the terror of deep darkness, right? And it's kind of just clear. We get kind of three descriptions of the way of the evil. And although we don't get a final statement here, but you could almost play that verse 12 again. God charges no one with wrong, right? We get murderers who are killing the poor and the needy. We get the adulterer who's sneaking around by night, under the cover of night, right? Nothing good happens after midnight is kind of the old rule for an athlete, right? Get yourself home so you don't get in trouble, so you can play the game on Sunday or on Saturday. And the thief, right? The thief who digs through your house, digs into the. You think of those clay houses that they would live in, or houses built out of clay, or the clay of the ground and the formed of the bricks. They're just kind of able to just dig right through it. This is not at all an act of evil, but you kind of think of the friends who bring the paralyzed man to Jesus and they can't get to him, so they got to go through the roof, right? They are able to actually dig open the roof, tear it apart, and lower their friend down to Jesus that he might heal him and also forgive his sins. Actually, in that different order, he forgives the sins just to shock the Pharisees and then heals him. But you kind of see, right? Here is, again, a description of the evil that he sees going on, just part of that great litany. Now, verses 18 through 25, kind of complicated. I think sometimes people have had a hard time reading these because Job seems to make a both and sort of argument, or what seems to be paradoxically against each other, because in some ways he's going to argue the same argument that the friends have been making, the kind of this theology of retribution, which is God does punish evil, but he's also going to argue, but yet a lot of evil people continue to exist and can do evil, and they seem like they're getting away with it. They even, as we'll hear there, they live long lives and they prosper and they are wealthy. But God, again, kind of go back to the other point, God will punish them. The day of the Lord will come, right? And God is playing the long game, if you would, to kind of put it in kind of maybe a bad way to say it, but a kind of a vernacular sort of way of describing it. He's going to play the long game. And these things are going to happen, but God will punish them. So, and in some ways it goes back and forth, which of course, sometimes scholars go like, why is he saying this and this? But, it's a complicated argument, maybe is my say. And this is maybe his answer to what's going on with the evil of the world. After we've just read this long litany, even after he said, God charges no one with wrong, even though it seems like people are crying out for the God and God is silent, he will act, I think is the point that he's making here. He will act. You say, swift are they on the face of the water. Their portion is cursed. Kind of upon a back and forth. But their portion is cursed by the land. In the land, no treader turns toward the vineyard. Drought and heat snatch away the snow water. So does Sheol, those who have sinned. Right? So just like the water is Isaiah kind of makes it the opposite argument when he says it, and just as the snow and the rain come down and they do not go back, they do not return without doing the thing that they have been sent, so too the word of the Lord comes and nourishes us before, here's actually saying, just like drought snatches the water away, so will Sheol snatch these people away, the wicked away. Of those who have sinned, the womb forgets them, the worm finds them sweet. Tasty. They are no longer remembered, so wickedness is broken like a tree, right? Even though they seem like they are swift upon the face of the water, their lot is also the same lot as all people, and they will be judged, right? Sheol will come for the sinner. They wrong the barren, childless woman, and do no good to the widow. Yet God prolongs the life of the mighty by his power, right? God, even though they do this evil, God is allowing them to continue to live. They rise up when they despair of life. He gives them security, and they are supported, and his eyes are upon their ways. They are exalted a little while. That's key, probably the key phrase there. A little while. And are gone. They are brought low and gathered up like all others. They are cut off like the head of grain. If it is not so, who will prove me a liar and show that there is nothing in what I say? So, right, we're going to see the evil prosper, but Sheol will swallow up the sinner. God will judge. It will happen. It may look, and it is, right? God gives rain to the righteous and the wicked as well. He feeds and cares for and heals, and he actually loves those who curse his name, which seems almost paradoxical or contradictory, but yet he continues to care for them. But they will be judged. They will be judged. This is his final point. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you, be gracious unto you. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Amen.